Dear learners, I myself, Dr. Vaishi Kuman, Course Coordinator, Sustainability Science. Today, we'll look into the concept and origin of sustainability as a term. It is very commonly used in these days by different people for different purpose. The etymology of this term, it is originated in the French verb soutenir, means to hold up or support. And if you look into the Oxford English Dictionary, it defines sustainable is capable of being upheld or maintainable. And to sustain, that is the meaning of to sustain is to keep a person, community, etc. from failing or giving way. To keep in being, to maintain at the proper level, to support life in, and to support life, nature, etc. with needs that to sustain means that. So, in a simple language, sustainability is the ability to continue or be continued for a long time. So, this emerging means the concept of sustainability science, emerging concept of sustainability science, we can discuss through the growth of human civilization, the industrial revolution, population versus resources, and what are the roots of this modern term of sustainability. And you will see number of publications during the last 4 or 5 decades on sustainability. So we can look into, revisit on those publications. We know as long as the people have been living on earth, means the human, we try to strive to improve our living conditions. And the universal currency for the measurement of this improvement is energy. Whatever we are talking, whatever we are eating, and flow of material, it's kind of energy. So the concept of sustainability can be easily explained if we understand the relation between our civilization, means human civilization, and energy, how we utilize the energy. Then taking into details, energy is the foundation of social organization from the hunter-gatherer societies and agrarian civilization up to the modern industrialized civilization. Energy is like soil in the water, a non-substitutable basic source of life. And what is civilization then? Civilization is a form or organization of energy. So, a number of authors have divided the history of mankind into major energy epochs, within which every epoch has its own energy basis and therefore a different social and metabolic regime or regime. There are the Neolithic epoch. Simple example during the Neolithic epoch is hunter-gatherer society, which was basically based on the unmodified passive use of solar energy. Then come to the agrarian epoch, which was basically on the self-controlled active use of solar energy. And the industrial epoch, which is basically based on the use of fossil fuel energy resources. I will not go into details about these epochs, but we can summarize based on the publication by different authors across the globe. The energy system of the hunter-gatherer societies was based on a passive unmodified use of solar energy, that is in the form of organic materials. These societies, barely more than a small clan organization, intervene passively in a given resource flow without having access to larger energy stocks. Their energy use did not modify natural energy flow substantially. Technical progress from that sense of energetic efficiency improvement is not relevant in the society. So that the development of culture or cultural development was so limited in that particular epoch, and it was very slow. And this change, this slow means that passive form of utilizing solar energy has changed with intervention of agriculture, say about 10,000 years ago. That after agrarian agriculture, the human fundamentally changed the face of the Mother Earth. The agrarian solar energy system was based on the three forms of energy: the metabolic energy of the food which was harvested from the crop and grassland, the mechanical energy which was generated by the domesticated animals and partly by wind and water power, and the calorific value which was provided by the use of timber, the most important source of energy, and raw material for buildings, furniture, etc. Still we are depend on this timber. These all three forms of energy were organic materials dependent on the land available, as you know, and they were predominantly collected and distributed locally. It is a closed cycle of resource, resource flow, closed cycle of resource flow. Societies in that agrarian era actively manage the solar energy flows to increase the available energy, basically by clearing the forest and by using intensive use of remaining forest. Like today's we are talking about non-timber forest production, right? To sustain future energy supply for society, the agrarian solar energy regime had to operate within the regeneration capacity of the ecological system. However, agrarian society always had a tendency to push their ecological limits. And despite attempts to organize some form of sustainable use, they ended up in a deep energy, ecological, economic, and social crisis. You just compare. When in that hunter-gatherer, we don't bother, the human never bother about the flow of energy, in the sense that when there is a crunch of resource, or there is lack of resources, they will move to another resources, another place. The exploitation use of fossil fuels, in particular hard coal, made it possible to overcome the limitation of the agrarian solar energy system and its energy crisis, and made the industrial revolution possible. The advent of the age of fossil fuels, this fossil fuels release that humans did used it fossil fuels from release Earth from the dependence on organic materials and from the trade-offs between heat, food, and raw materials. From the agrarian way of utilization of resources, then we move to the fossil fuel that relieve us from that crisis of resources. And fossil fuels are, it's a one-time gift that lifted us up from subsistence agriculture. However, at the end of 20th century, the world economy was based on entirely in fossil fuels. And the world experiences an ecological crisis because of the negative external effect caused by enormous energy surplus of fossil fuels. You will see here how tremendously the per capita consumption of energy has increased in human history. As you will see in these metabolic energy regimes from hunter-gatherer societies, we used to have 10 to 20 gigajoule. Then when we move to the agrarian society, when we have active solar energy system, then per capita energy is 60 to 80 gigajoules. Then industrial society 220 to 350 gigajoule. And today's this post-fossil fuel energy system still unable to answer. This is how the concept of sustainability emerges and clashes with the limits of the energy system. Let us take an example in European world. Because why I'm giving in the European world is that, this civilization, the growth of their civilization was very fast as compared to other parts of the world. And that will be easy for us to understand. At the end of the 10th century, a changing climate that affected the agrarian solar energy system in the Europe. Then forests were cleared very systematically, and land was used intensively for agriculture and other stock farming. And because of that, The economic has become success because of the agriculture in the high middle ages that resulted, when human has economically successful, then population increases. That combined with other factors finally led to the near collapse of the agrarian solar energy system in the 14th century. The solar energy system exceeded its energetic boundaries. When population is affected, you have limited access, and because of that, it was essentially dependent on agricultural land and the forest, and which were becoming more and more depleting during the late Middle Ages. This process was accelerated when the medieval warm period gradually came to an end, followed by a period called the Little Ice Age, from the beginning of the 15th to the 19th century. About the beginning of the 14th century, population growing. And when population is growing, if there is growing population, definitely that direct affect to the demand for timber. Timber demand will be increased. Demand of firewood will be increased. Then it exercises extreme pressure on the energy system. Wood shortages were especially experienced in regions where many consumers and products were concentrated. That is very common phenomenon. Whenever you see in the modern world also, when concentration or density of even population is high, like you will see in those areas of resource crunch, like towns, cities, and areas with industrial area like metallurgy or glass production industry. In the 14th century, the agrarian solar energy system in Central Europe exceeded the carrying capacity of its natural forest system. The decline and the imminent collapse of the agrarian solar energy system brought forth a new development. The protection of the environment and energy resources against overexploitation became a central duty of regional institutions. In the middle of the 18th century, the agrarian solar energy system and its sustainability components finally breached its boundary in Europe, as the population increased and the energy system was unable to satisfy the demand. Agrarian solar energy system experienced its most serious structural crisis since its near breakdown at the middle of the 14th century. The legal system of the Almaty could not prevent the ecological boundaries of the local sustainability. Local sustainability system is being breached at the beginning of the industrial age. The Almaty economy had become outdated and hampered exploitation of natural resources. Thus, the Prussian Land Reform Edict of 1811 transferred control over the land from the local community to the responsibility of single individual or companies or institutions. That means they legally stopped that concept of this Almaty system. That means after the legal end of the Almaty, the term sustainability emerges against the background of the double revolution of industrialization based on the fossil fuels and the age of enlightenment. And if you look into the fossil fuels era, that was happening especially at the end of the 18th century. As we know, the agrarian solar energy system could no longer provide either sufficient food or the required energy. Because in the 18th century and early 19th century, the state of the Central European forest worsened dramatically, and consequently, there was a steady and strong rise in price. Because when there is lack of resources, you will find the demand, means when demand is high, then automatically price of the resources will increase. The increasing wood consumption and the rising population reduce the wood supply, right? That wood shortage, in particular in the dynamic economic centers like cities and industrial regions, led in the 18th century to combine energy in ecological crisis. Endanger the formation development of the national capitalism. That is now economic is bringing the economic, that affect because of the effect in the sustainability of the system. If fossil fuel energy sources had not been exploited to satisfy the increasing energy demand, then the forestry authorities, especially in the mining regions, tried to restore the forest and to preserve them for mining. This new concept of forest preservation and management was also was termed as sustainable, to sustain the system. However, the new alignment of forest management could not satisfy the rapidly growing demand of energy because population is also increasing. And this was only possible, means it was able to, maintain because of the exploitation of coal. As coal is as the term is the subterranean forest, right? This new dynamic industrial energy system, which replaced the agrarian solar energy system with its inherent energy shortage, produced a permanent energy surplus. So industrialization in Europe was additionally accelerated by development of the capital market, technical progress, the changing role of the state, abrogation of internal tariff barriers, the development of a fossil-based transport infrastructure, the electricity system, the new legal structure based on private ownership, and the age of enlightenment. But you will see, since the second half of the 20th century, for the first time in human history, abundant energy is available, at least industrial country. That's why I'm giving an example of European context in the beginning of this course. Hence, per capita consumption rose rapidly for some decades. Inexpensive energy penetrated all social and production areas, changed them fundamentally. Individual mobility developed in previously unknown dimension, so that even you will see they have seen even tourism and travel become an important global economic factors. However, this new energy system, which created the basis for the expansion of all economic sector, it causes a negative external effect. First, on a local and regional, like particle dust, because of industrialization, this in the local level, it happens. Then on a continental level, you will see nitrous oxide pollution, sulfur, and finally on a global level, what we are experiencing now, it is climate change and it is ozone hole, etc. Thus, in this human history, the term sustainability and the idea of sustainability were both born from the energy crisis of the agrarian energy system. This is not new. That's why I'm giving example to the European. Because when European was facing the energy crisis in India, probably in India, we could not have such kind of issues of sustainability in that large scale. So new sustainability concept called modern age of sustainability is based on the awareness that the current lifestyle of the minority who use resources of the world and emit most of the emission cannot be ethically generalized for more than 7 billion people on the earth. So the contemporary view of sustainability in a broad sense, you can look at how it is originated. Now we have understanding that the concept of sustainability was born and it was born with the human civilization since the agricultural era. But if you look in the contemporary view of sustainability, then in a broad sense, it has originated from 6 separate strands of the thought, which is reported by different authors across the world. Those roots are the ecological or carrying capacity root, the resource environment root, the biosphere root, the critique of technology root, the no growth, slow growth root, the eco-development root. What is ecological carrying capacity root? The concept of this ecological or carrying capacity root was developed by ecologists, that a given ecosystem can provide a sustenance for a maximum number of given species, and that exceeding that maximum will set in motion a chain of even cutting the population back to or below the maximum is the heart of carrying capacity. Then come to resource environment root. Resource is finite, as you know. Environment quality matters. This question about the capacity of Earth to sustain the rapidly growing population. So this concept talks about capacity of Earth versus population. We can look back to a few of the publications that reflect this concept. Some of the publications are The Road to Survival, or A Plundered Planet, The Challenge of Man's Future, Man's Role in Changing the Face of the Earth, Limits to Growth, which is very common and is very famous publication. The third root is Biosphere root. This is, reflected the human activities versus environmental degradation. Human activity can degrade the entire planet. This is actually happening. The scale of change initiated by men is no longer local, but it has become global. The best example is then the climatic and hydrological effect of deforestation. And now we have seen the effect in terms of, we have this global climate change. This view will be seen in few of the publications like Man and Nature or Physical Geography as modified by human active action by Marsh, author Marsh, 1864, Man and the Earth, then the increasing scale of man's role as an agent of global change, Alfred Lotka in Elements of Physical Biology, then Kenneth Boulding. Now, in Critique of Technology, you will see in the late 1960s and the early 1970s, pernicious effect of the indiscriminate export of technology from the industrialized countries to developing countries were very stressed. Some authors have advocated moderate growth and have particularly stressed the significance of technology for developing countries that are ecologically gentle and adaptable to their economic, resource and social structures. And few of the publications like Ecological Implication of Technological Innovation, the Careless Technology, Ecological International Development, Small is Beautiful, Economic Easy People Matter, Agricultural Sustainability in a Changing World Order. Among these, the book Small is Beautiful play an important role in launching the appropriate technology movement, and it foreshadowed the concept of sustainability. Fifth root is no growth, slow growth root. It talks about limits to growth, steady state economics. As we know, the unprecedented spurt in economic growth in the 19th century based on the steam engine and capitalism required and generated values, attitude and human cost that led to many question the validity of growth as a goal of society. So, publications like the Entropy Law and the Economic Process, World Dynamics, The Limits to Growth, Models of Doom, then Towards a Steady State Economy, Softer Paths. This publication talks about this concept. The common assumptions of all these publications are growth must stop at some point. A no-growth economy can promote ethical values and superior social goals. Industrial countries should reduce per capita energy consumption, etc. These publications are significant because it is influential in grafting normative moral and ethical concept to the concept of sustainability. Attention to long-range problems, increased new ways of looking at the future, stimulated debate and encouraged examination of values. One of the important roots we need to understand is eco-development root. In 1977, Professor Ignacy Sarch of the Center for International D in Paris wrote The Salient Features of Development. The author invented the term eco-development and it defined it as an approach to development that aimed at harmonizing social and economic objectives with ecologically sound management in a spirit of solidarity with future generations. However, he did not use the word sustainability, but the contribution of Sarch is significant because it provides the basic rationale for 1978 UNEP document that marked the first use of the term sustainability in a UN document. Thus, sustainability emerges since the late 1960s. As we know, the world has started to use a number of national and international publications, different forums, conventions, etc. And few of them are blueprint for survival. IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, in 1972, it is found that one of the first instances of the use of the word sustainable in the context of environment. Then comes some other publications are from the Woodland Conference and the Prizes that is sponsored by Judge O. Mitchell, a geologist and businessman in US. And number of documents were prepared in 1974. For the first time, planning a session for these conferences used the word sustainability for the first time in the United States in the context of development. The planning meetings in 1974 led to the Woodland Conference in 1975, 1977, 1979, 1982. In turn, the conferences led to books that were among the first to use the word sustainable in their titles. Few of the publications are Alternative Growth 1, A Search for Sustainable Future, Quest for a Sustainable Society, the management of sustainable growth. Then comes United Nations Conferences report, that in that you will see the emerging ideas of the during 70s, and a word appears in a report of UN in 1978. Organizations like World Watch Institution in their report Building Sustainable Society, State of the World. The 1987 State of the World issue with the subtitle A World Watch Report on Progress Towards a Sustainable Society. So the word is started used by different organizations. Like again, the World Resource Institute in their book The Global Possible, that not only stressed the concept of sustainability, but elaborated a definition that mentioned about at the core of the idea of sustainability. They used the word. Then some of the words they use is the concept that current decisions should not damage prospect of maintaining or improving living standard of the future. Sustainable development is a three-leg stool. It bases on scientific realities, consensus on ethical principles, and consideration of long-run self-interest. There is a broad agreement that pursuing policies that impair the welfare of future generations is unfair. It again mentioned about the poverty, which denies people the means to act in their own long-run interest, underlies deterioration of resources and the growing population pressure in much of the world and affects all. In India, the Indian Science Congress Association in 1985 in its annual meeting that was on science, technology in environment and management. The presidential address by T.N. Kosu was entitled Environmental Priorities in India and Sustainable Development. Few more institutions like International Institute of Applied System Analysis, they have publication of Sustainable Development of the Biosphere 1986. Then we know that the World Commission on Environment Development, that is our common future. The World Bank Sustainable Development, the Global Imperative report of the World Bank Workshop on Sustainability Issues in Agriculture, preceding of the 7 agriculture sector of symposium. These are some of the institutions that discuss about issues of concept and issues of sustainability. Then the word becomes popular, especially after the publication of, as you know, Our Common Future. The United Nations Conference on Environment Development, also known as Rio Summit, held in 1992. It illustrated the importance of action based on the concept of sustainable development and resulted in adoption of the Agenda 21 programs. Then followed the Johannesburg Summit, that is in 2002, that means Rio plus 10, that emphasized the importance of education in facilitating action and proposed a decade of education for sustainable development from 2005 to 2014. Then followed, we have seen Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals. That the details of those MDGs and SDGs will come in the next few lectures. The take-home point is, looking back over our history, human civilization, it makes very clear that energy system causes energy crisis. When the system crosses its inherent boundaries, the resulting energy crisis had a decisive influence on the origin of the idea and concept of a sustainable development society. The idea of sustainable development originated at the beginning of 14th century as a response to the energy crisis of the agrarian solar energy system. The term originated at the beginning of the 18th century when the agrarian energy system entered into its final crisis due to industrialization. The attempt to stabilize this energy and resource system by sustainable forestry and to maintain a secure distance from the borders of the agrarian solar energy system fell. Only access to fossil energy sources led society out of the energy crisis of the agrarian solar world and allowed a new energy system to emerge with new system boundaries. With the success of the fossil energy system, long perceived as the first limitless energy system, the idea of sustainability, rooted in the solar agrarian energy world, lost its meaning for society, remained valid only for the forestry sector. Only when the limit of fossil fuel energy system became visible in the second half of the 20th century was the idea of sustainability revived and was developed further, as you know, into the Brundtland concept of sustainable development of society, which accepts new limits to the energy system. Then New sustainability concept called modern as sustainability in a broad sense has originated from 6 separate strands of thought which was discussed in details, which was reported by different authors. And at last, it is the World Commission on Environment Development, as we call Brundtland Commission, that brings general acceptable definition of sustainable development that invite the world to aware about a sustainable society or sustainable planet. Thanks. Let us meet in the next session.